All righty, so here we are. Welcome to the webinar today. We are going to be talking about what's next when you start outgrowing QuickBooks. Thanks for joining. We have a full agenda for the next hour. We're going to be covering a lot of hopefully very useful information to you. I'm going to go over the agenda in just a second, but just a real quick. My name is Brad White. I'm the CEO of VARC Solutions. My background is I've spent a little over 26 years in the QuickBooks space, not only teaching people how to use QuickBooks, but also running a good bookkeeping practice where we specialize in QuickBooks. So I hope that a lot of the topics that we talk about and some of the experiences that we share will be helpful to you. First off, when you're evaluating, are you in the right software? Is it time to upgrade? And then also just kind of help you overcome some of the challenges when it comes to migrating from one platform to maybe a new platform as you continue to grow as a business. Also, I will be this webinar is being recorded. So after the webinar, we'll be sending out a link to the recording so you can watch that for sure. Also, during the webinar, if you have any questions, there is a questions panel that you can use to ask questions. You may or may not see a chat panel, but if you see that, you could also use chat. If you've got a question, you can also use the raise hand icon. Basically, just let me know you have a question or a thought. But if you put the questions in the questions panel, I will either get to those during the webinar and I'll respond out loud to the whole group, or if we just run out of time, we'll make sure and capture those and then we'll respond to you individually if we don't get to those during the webinar. Also, just a real quick kind of a neat little note here as we get going. This webinar is eligible for CPE credits. To receive CPE credit for this webinar, you must attend the entire presentation, demonstrate active participation, and also at the end of the webinar, we'll also provide a post-class evaluation that we would really appreciate you to fill out and give us some feedback on. And through that evaluation, you can request your CPE certificate. You will receive 1 hour of CPE credit for each 50 contiguous minutes of attendance. This is a 1 hour webinar, so you'll get basically one CPE credit for this for you. So that's really, really exciting, and we're happy to be able to offer that as well. So let's talk about the agenda. We've got 4 primary buckets that we want to walk through today. The first is really just understanding the QuickBooks ecosystem. If you don't know what the options are within the QuickBooks ecosystem, you might think, hey, I'm using QuickBooks, I'm outgrowing QuickBooks, there's nothing else for me here. But you may be wrong. There actually are some really cool options that you may not even be aware of. So we're going to expose you to that. Number 2, we're going to talk about signs that you are outgrowing QuickBooks. What are those telltale signs? What are those typical challenges and problems that businesses get into that are signals, they're indicators that it may be time to look at something else. Then we're going to specifically address what are those next options. Okay, if it's not QuickBooks, what is it? What are some of those options that you should be considering? And then last but not least, we'll end the webinar with some of the migration pain points. Like what are some of the challenges, things that you should be considering when thinking through a migration, because they're not always clean and nice and pretty and easy or fast. And so we're going to talk through some of our experiences when we've either migrated people to QuickBooks or off of QuickBooks, depending on the scenario. So that's what we're going to be covering today. Again, if you have questions throughout, just let us know. We'll be getting to those as well. Okay, let's dive right in. So let's talk about, first and foremost, the QuickBooks ecosystem. Again, it's important to understand what is there, because you may be on what would maybe be considered a lower tier of QuickBooks, and you could actually stay within the QuickBooks ecosystem, but simply upgrade to a higher tier. And that is a much easier, much simpler, much quicker, and less painful, typically, migration than maybe some of the other ones you may be considering. So we're going to specifically talk about QuickBooks Desktop. We usually get a lot of questions about that. Talk about QuickBooks Online, a new product called IES, otherwise known as Intuit Enterprise Solutions. And finally, we'll also talk about some integrations and third-party solutions as it relates to the QuickBooks ecosystem and what things you can do with it. Okay. So let's first off talk about QuickBooks Desktop. One of the most common questions that I get is QuickBooks Desktop dead? Is it gone? Is it ever coming back? All those types of things. And the good news is QuickBooks Desktop is not dead. It is still here. It is alive and kicking. It is very, very robust and functional. But there definitely has been a lot of talk in the industry. There's been a lot of rumors running around that QuickBooks Desktop is dead. Well, let me clarify what that means. For the last 25 years in the desktop space, there have primarily been 3 products within that. There's been QuickBooks Pro, QuickBooks Premier, and QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. So if you're on Pro or Premier, or if you had been thinking about getting QuickBooks Pro or Premier, those 2 products are, yes, effectively dead. And the reason why I say that is because you can't just call up Intuit. We're VARC Solutions. We're actually a reseller of QuickBooks as well, but you can't call us up and get QuickBooks Pro or Premier. If you're already on Pro and Premier, you can stay on it. But as soon as you need to do things like adding users or doing anything like that, basically your option is to move to something like QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, which we're going to talk about. But Pro and Premier are effectively dead because you can't buy them new as a brand new subscription for a new company. So that's kind of like the first way of Intuit to eventually remove a product from a product line is to stop selling it. Okay, so Pro and Premier you can no longer buy. QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, however, is still alive and kicking. It is still it is something you can buy. You can still get it. You can still upgrade it. You can still upgrade to it from some of those other products like Pro and Premier. So between you and me, Intuit puts a lot of time and money into QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions, the desktop product. It's a very, very robust solution. And compared to QuickBooks Online, it still actually has quite a few features that make it better in many cases. So Intuit hasn't gotten rid of QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise because some of those advanced features that are in there have not been added yet to the QuickBooks Online platform. Okay, I think that's obviously part of the long-term roadmap. Once Intuit adds all of the advanced functionality within the QuickBooks Online environment, I would imagine that QuickBooks Enterprise eventually would be discontinued. But that has not happened yet. There's been no indication that that's going to be happening yet. So I think for the foreseeable 2 to 3 to 4 years, QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise is still here, and it is very, very robust and functional in terms of software, and should definitely be considered as an option. Okay, so let's talk about QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise. So since it is the desktop platform that you could choose, QuickBooks Enterprise comes in 4 tiers. There's a silver tier, a gold tier, a platinum tier, and a diamond tier. Now, each one of those has additional functionality and features and capabilities. But what you need to know is QuickBooks Desktop starts for as little as $163 a month for silver, and it goes up from there depending on what tier and obviously how many users. And by the way, just a real quick disclaimer, these prices are as of last month. So Intuit usually comes out with brand new prices around September of every year. So these prices may be old. They might be a little bit higher now. Intuit does tend to raise their prices at least once a year. So don't quote me on those prices. I just want to kind of give you a general range for what that might cost you. Okay. QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise, however, can get up to 40 users. It has advanced inventory assemblies or build of materials capabilities, as well as warehouses and locations. It's a great solution for a lot of companies. Okay. Let's talk about QuickBooks Online. So QuickBooks Online is the cloud version of QuickBooks. But one of the things that's interesting about QuickBooks Online, it's been around for 15 years. Most accounting firms these days recommend and in many cases require a company to use QuickBooks Online for if no other reason, because it allows ease of access to the books. Okay, if I don't have to drive to your house to get access to your books, or remote into your computer to get access to your books, that's more accessible. And so QuickBooks Online makes it easier for accountants to access. And quite frankly, it makes it easier for you to access. If you're not sitting in your office, you can still get to your accounting. So it is still, it is a very good solution. Well, just like on the desktop side, the cloud version of QuickBooks Online has 4 tiers. There's Simple Start, Essentials, Plus, and Advanced. And that's starting out at $35 a month for the lowest tier, all the way up to $235 a month for the advanced tier. And that will take you from either 1 user all the way up to 25 users within that platform. So Simple Start's 1 user, Essentials is 3 users, Plus is 5 users, and QBO Advanced is up to 25 users. Okay, so I'm going to pause here just for a second because I know we had a question that I see in the question panel. But what I want you to take away from the last 2 slides is this. If you were on, for example, a QuickBooks Pro subscription and you're thinking, gosh, I'm outgrowing this, where do I go? You could upgrade to QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions. Okay, if you're on QuickBooks Enterprise Solutions and maybe you're on the silver, the lowest tier of Desktop Enterprise, there are more features and capabilities in those higher tiers of QuickBooks Enterprise. So you may not be completely outgrowing QuickBooks Enterprise, you just may need to upgrade to the next higher tier. And the same thing is true of QuickBooks Online. The reason why these tiers are here is because when you don't need all the functionality, you could save some money. Maybe you don't need that many users. Great, save yourself some money. But as you grow, you might need more users and more features and capabilities, and there is another higher tier up the ladder that you could subscribe to get you what you need and still be on the QuickBooks system. Okay. By the way, so in the question panel, there was a question that said, do you help people with evaluating which product they should upgrade to in terms of desktop? And the answer is absolutely we do. That is one of the things that our solution team does every single day is talking with clients on the phone, finding out what their needs are, getting a little bit more into the nuance and the weeds, like what about this feature do you need? What about what you're doing right now is not working? And so, yes, we absolutely help you evaluate that. And if the end result of that is that you should be on desktop, we'll recommend that. If it's QuickBooks Online, we'll recommend that. If there's a hybrid solution, we'll recommend that. So we will absolutely fight for you to make sure that you get the right solution. So great question. Thank you for asking that. Okay. All right. Let's move on to the next part of the QuickBooks ecosystem, which is what is called what I call a hybrid solution. So the biggest problem, the biggest challenge with QuickBooks Desktop has been that it's on a computer, on a server, sitting in an office, sitting in a network, and it may not be as accessible to people outside your company that are not on your network. Okay. So the good news is somebody solved that problem by creating cloud access to your QuickBooks Desktop Enterprise software. Basically, there are companies that do hosting of desktop applications so that you can still have the software that you love, yet access it via the cloud. So that's why I call it a hybrid solution. It's the desktop software hosted in the cloud. And we actually, so related to that last question, we actually have several different hosting companies that we recommend. We've seen good and bad. We've seen fast and slow. We've seen great service and not so great service. And we actually are, I would humbly say that we're actually experts in this area because we know the good ones and we know the not so great ones, and we can help you evaluate that as well. All right. So hosted desktop is a good hybrid solution. One more that I do want to point out, and this is new to a lot of folks, is called Intuit Enterprise Suite, IES for short. So last September, so September of 2024, Intuit came out with a brand new product called Intuit Enterprise Suite. It's Intuit's advance into the mid-market space. So when we're talking about outgrowing QuickBooks, yeah, you could outgrow Desktop Enterprise, you could outgrow QuickBooks Online Advanced. What's next? Well, what's next is potentially Intuit Enterprise Suite. It is still a QuickBooks product, it is still an Intuit product, but it's intending to go up against other mid-market solutions such as Sage, Microsoft Dynamics, and NetSuite. Here's what you need to know. Intuit Enterprise Suite is like QuickBooks Online Advanced in terms of look and feel. So for example, if you're very familiar with QuickBooks Online already, moving from QuickBooks Online to Intuit Enterprise Suite is going to be a very, very seamless transition because it looks and feels the same, but they've added some additional functionality on top of it for mid-market or growing companies. Now, specifically, and this webinar is not a deep dive into that product, but I do want to kind of share one of the biggest takeaways or biggest reasons why you might consider IES is because it does target multi-entity companies, multi-entity accounting. So if you're a company, but you've got 3 or 4 different companies, but you want all that kind of sort of rolled up into one or have access to all of them within one login, that is something that the Intuit Enterprise Suite solves. Because in QBO, you used to have to log into one account, one company, but if you wanted to move to the other one, you'd have to log out, relog back in to just access these different companies. Now with IES, there's one login, you log in and you can actually toggle between the different entities within that subscription. It adds robust dimension-based reporting, which the best way I can kind of describe for you if you're an Excel person is like it's kind of like pivot tables for reporting. So it's not just rows and columns, P&L by month, whatever. You can actually then add additional layers of reporting capability on top of that called dimensions. It does intercompany transfers. It can handle revenue recognition, which is, by the way, something a small company typically doesn't have to mess with, but a growing company, a larger company, a mid-market company might need to. IES can handle up to 50 entities, up to 200 administrators, and up to 500 users. So you can see, even with Enterprise Solutions Desktop that went up to 40 and QuickBooks Online Advanced that went up to 25, you can see how IES kind of blows those out of the water by going up to 200 admins and 500 users. That's a lot bigger, a lot more robust. And by the way, again, just scratching the surface on that. If somebody wants to know more about IES, we'd love to tell you more. Okay, but that is within the Intuit ecosystem where you can go as you continue growing. But let's talk about one more thing related to the ecosystem, and this is really sort of what I would call Intuit's approach to solving client problems with their software. Okay. In other words, if Intuit had the task of building every single feature that every single company could possibly ever use, and they knew exactly what every industry wanted, no matter how big, medium, or big, medium, or small, medium, or large you were, they could go out and do that. But it would take them about 30 years to go build that one entire solution with everything in it, perfect for everybody. Okay. And chances are, even within that 30 years, they probably still wouldn't be able to do it. Okay. Intuit acknowledges that they are not the solution for every single company out there. Intuit has built a core accounting software. Its accounting competency is banking and credit card transactions, AR/AP, financials, payroll, things like that. Okay. Well, what about construction management? What about CRM system? What about field service management? What about robust inventory warehouse management? There's so many things that businesses need, and QuickBooks alone can't solve that problem. So Intuit, very much like the iPhone and the iPhone App Store, they basically have enabled companies, vendors out there to build solutions that integrate with QuickBooks to solve the more unique, special, industry-specific, etc. functionality that they haven't integrated into the platform. Okay, I'm going to give you a few examples. Not going to go through all these, but I want to give you a taste. So for example, QuickBooks Online doesn't really have much in the way of inventory. Okay. So if you're a company thinking about QuickBooks and you want, and you do have inventory that you need to manufacture goods that you can then sell, things like that, you're going to need an inventory add-on to be able to use QuickBooks Online. Well, we are big fans of Fishbowl, Sin7, Katana, Finale, SOS, and there's a whole bunch of other ones, but these are the ones that we recommend because they really do a great job, and they work with QuickBooks and they integrate seamlessly. Okay. CRM systems. QuickBooks by itself is not a CRM system. It's a great accounting system, but it's not a great CRM. And so you also have the ability of integrating Method CRM, Results CRM, which is also a little bit more of a field service management program. And then we also are specialists at QuickBase, which I'll explain a little bit more on later. But basically, we can build a CRM system, or you can get a CRM system that integrates with your QuickBooks. Okay. There's payroll solutions, AP automation solutions, sales tax automation solutions like Avalara, reporting solutions like Reach Reporting and Fathom. I mean, there's just so many things. So what I need you to know, or what I want you to know, is that is actually part of Intuit's strategy, is to build a core accounting package, allow people to build solutions on top of that to solve the world's problems as it relates to accounting. Okay. So it's a pretty smart move, in my opinion, because they can actually help solve a lot more problems in a lot shorter time by enabling companies around the world to build those third-party solutions. So what I've put up on the screen here is really just a snapshot of the ecosystem, the connected apps that play well with QuickBooks. And so these are companies that have gone out and built a solution. They've built the integration. It's great, right? Beyond that, you may have a very dedicated, specific solution that either you've built or maybe you bought something else. And your next question is, can I integrate that with QuickBooks so that I don't have to get rid of QuickBooks? And the answer is very likely. If QuickBooks has an open API, which it does, and your other solution that you're trying to integrate with has an open API, which is basically just a fancy word of meaning they've both allowed the software to talk with other systems. That's what open API effectively means. There are integration platforms such as Zapier, Workato, and Zaptiva, which are sort of like that middleware that bridges the gap between QuickBooks and some other solution that has an open API. So that is just a real quick laser focused snapshot on the ecosystem. What I want to do now is I want to open up a poll. And by the way, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the question panel at this point. If there's anything that I talked about that you're like, I want to learn a little bit more about that, let us know. But in the meantime, I'm going to open up a poll. And the poll is, which of these options are new to you? And I'm going to load up the poll here in just a second. But basically, the question is any of that stuff new to you? Desktop Enterprise, QBO Advanced, Hybrid Solutions, IES, third-party ecosystem? Let me load that poll to you. And I'll give you about 30 seconds to answer the poll. If any of these are new to you, go ahead and click the box on it. And I'm going to give you, again, about 15 more seconds to do that. And while you're doing that, I'm going to go ahead and answer another question that came in via the question panel. And the question was, with so many third-party solutions out there, it's like kind of like, how do you know which one is going to be a good fit? How can you help my business determine exactly which third-party solution that you might really need? Which, by the way, again, is a great question, because if there are 10 different hosting companies, or 5 or 10 different payroll solutions, or 20 different CRM systems, it really is hard to navigate through that to figure out like what is the right solution. Not just can it do the work, but is it the most affordable for what it does? Do they have good customer service? Yes or no? Do they have dedicated partner reps that we work with to help you and help us? Those types of things. But yeah, so the good news is actually, if you reach out to us at VARC Solutions, varcsolutions.com, we actually have, we've done case studies on this kind of stuff. We have battle cards where we've done this versus that type of comparisons. Basically, give us a call and we'd be happy to help you evaluate, again, what you're trying to solve. And we can definitely point out, hey, there's 20 of these. Don't worry about that. Focus on these 2 or 3. And then let's go do a demo and you can actually kick the tires on those to see what might be the best solution for you. And of course, we'd also help with quotes, orders, just anything like that, demos. We can help with that kind of stuff as well. Okay. All right. I'm going to show the poll because everybody has answered that question. And then I'm going to answer a few more questions that came in while we were talking there. So everybody should be able to see the results on your screen right now. So the question was, which of these options are new to you? And it looks like Intuit Enterprise Solutions, Intuit Enterprise Suite, that is, IES, is the one that is the most new. Hybrid solutions where you've got your desktop software hosted in the cloud is a little bit newer for some of you. And it sounds like the third-party ecosystem as well. Thanks for participating in that poll. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing the results and answer one more question that came in, which was, does IES mimic the desktop product or QuickBooks Online in its user interface? Great question. Intuit Enterprise Suite is most like QuickBooks Online. In fact, I would say it's nothing like desktop. The interface is exactly what you would see if you logged into QuickBooks Online Advanced in terms of look and feel, but with the multi-entity capabilities and stuff that I talked about. So yeah, it's more like QBO in terms of interface. So thanks for that question. Okay. All right, let's go on to the next section. Thanks for those questions. So let's move on to the next section, which is signs you're outgrowing QuickBooks. So first off, what causes you to outgrow QuickBooks? Like, what are those things which you're encountering right now that would give you an indication that maybe you're about to outgrow QuickBooks, or maybe you already have? So things outside the accounting system that you find yourself using all the time, growing business complexity, as well as a desire for an all-in-one platform, which basically means you're probably using multiple systems, multiple platforms, and ultimately you just want it all in one big place. Okay, that would be a good example. What's key to understand about QuickBooks in terms of accounting system is it's not your do everything system. It is your accounting system. Okay, so if you're trying to do a whole bunch of other things in your business, hoping QuickBooks does it might be a stretch. So we'll talk about that. So let's talk about things outside of QuickBooks. Some of the most common examples, I'm constantly using Excel. I'm doing my billing in Excel. I'm doing my analysis in Excel. I'm doing my reporting in Excel. If you're constantly looking for workarounds, like it won't do it, so I'm having to find some software that does do it, looking for workarounds is a pretty good sign that maybe you need something bigger and better. I would say another example is having to import or export data between multiple systems on a frequent basis, not just once, not just one time, but like all the time. I've got a field service management system that I'm having to export data from, import into QuickBooks because that's the accounting system I use. I've got data in QuickBooks, and now I need to export that so I can build some financial models, all these types of things that you get into when you don't have an all-in-one system. That would be a sign that you may be outgrowing QuickBooks. Here's another one: business complexity that is continuing to grow. I'm just going to slow down here just for a second and kind of talk just generally. When you start a business, things can be pretty simple. You've got one product you sell. You've got one service you provide. You've got maybe a specific client you help. And then over time, things tend to get more complex. You sell multiple products. You sell multiple services. Maybe you have different price tiers within your services. You've got sales reps now that need to get paid commissions. You've got payroll. You've got sales tax. You've got project management, production systems, ticket management systems. You don't start there. But as you continue to grow your business, sometimes those are things that are just inevitable. Like you've got to be able to handle these things. But if you're still using the software you bought 10 years ago, very likely your business complexity is now making it not the best fit. Again, QuickBooks can still do the accounting part, but it's not built to be a commission management system. It's not built to be a ticket management system. It's not built to do cross-team collaboration and production operation management. So it is an accounting system, and it does that really, really well. Okay. But as you continue to grow, what you typically want is a more cohesive system. What that means is instead of having 5 apps that all combined do what you needed to do, you start looking for one solution that does all 5 things. I think also what this tends to mean is you also want more control. Think of it like this. If you've got 5 different solutions that you're trying to integrate and get all connected together, that can work until it doesn't work. Okay. But if any one of those things stops working, it could shut your entire company down. If an integration stops working, it could put you in a very painful situation. If you're relying on all these different software vendors to make sure that their software works and is continued to be updated, patched, all that stuff, it's also something that's a little bit out of your control. Like you're waiting on them to add features, you're waiting on them to add functionality, and that lack of control can lead to a lot of anxiety, can lead to a lot of stress. Okay. So again, these are signs that you may be outgrowing QuickBooks. Let me go ahead and I'm going to pull up my next poll here because I want to know from you what growing pains you have seen. So let me pull up the poll here. And I am going to, one second here, launch the second poll. So again, give me some feedback on this. Which growing pains have you seen? Using Excel way too much, many problems that maybe you need a workaround for. Maybe you are that company that's doing all these exports and imports and it's a frequent thing. Maybe you've got growing business complexity, or again, maybe you've got these different applications that are somehow plugging into QuickBooks, but the integration itself is a little clunky. Okay, I'm going to give you another 30 seconds to answer that poll. And while you're doing that, again, I've got another couple questions here that I want to answer out loud. The question was, how do I know if I've outgrown QuickBooks or if I just need a third-party solution? That is a great question. How do I know if I've outgrown QuickBooks or if I just need a third-party solution? Okay. I think it depends obviously on the specific thing that you need it to do. So for example, let's just talk about marketing for a second. You're in a business and you need to do a better job of marketing your services. I need to get more leads. I need to track my sales pipeline. I need to be able to do marketing campaigns where I'm trying to drive leads to my sales team so that they can sell more. Let's assume that that's your problem. Okay. Well, QuickBooks by itself is not a marketing platform. It is not a CRM system. So at that point, your option is to go, well, I need to either do one of 2 things. I either need to find an accounting system that also can do marketing management, marketing execution, or I need to keep using QuickBooks and see if there's a marketing platform that will integrate with it. Okay. That is obviously something that we can help you evaluate for sure. But give you an example. Intuit, a couple years back, bought MailChimp. It's now called Intuit QuickBooks or Intuit MailChimp. Eventually, I'm sure they'll call it Intuit Mail or QuickBooks Email or QuickBooks Marketing. Who knows? But right now, it's Intuit MailChimp. And MailChimp does marketing really, really well. Okay, well, it integrates with QuickBooks. We're a big fan of Method CRM. It can also do very, very curated marketing campaigns when it knows who your customers are. You can tag certain clients in a certain way, and you could market directly to those specific clients. So depending on how involved your marketing needs are, we would be able to recommend, well, maybe it's MailChimp, maybe it's Method, maybe there's another system depending on what your needs are. So I hope that answers your question. But again, I'd be either looking to see, first off, is there a third-party add-on that can solve my problem? And if not, then I might be looking for an all-in-one solution that could do those things. Okay. All right. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. So, which growing pains have you seen? There's actually a pretty good diversity here, but it looks like the biggest one is clunky integrations. Very common problem, followed up by many problems that need a workaround. Yep, pretty frequently. And then looks like everybody is seeing the others pretty consistently too, which is Excel, frequent import exports, and just growing business complexity. Yep, all those things are very, very typical. Okay. All right. Thank you for sharing that. Appreciate that. Okay, let's go on to the next section here. So the question is, okay, great. What's next? So in fact, this is a great segue from the question we just answered, which is, how do I know if I've outgrown QuickBooks or if I just need a third-party solution? Well, let's assume for a second that you've evaluated the third-party solutions that integrate with QuickBooks, and maybe you're like, I don't know, this just doesn't seem like a really good fit. I need something else. I need something bigger, better, all-inclusive, all-in-one. That might be at the point where you're ready to go, okay, let's look at what's out there. So this is actually the hard part. The options that you could be considering when outgrowing QuickBooks are unlimited. However, the realistic options are very, very few. I'm going to outline those for you so you know exactly which ones I'm talking about. But before we get to what are the actual options, here's a better question. Are you ready for this? Are you prepared for this? Because I mean, if you and your leadership team kind of sat in a room and said, hey, this is, everybody's frustrated. We need to find a better solution here. Let's just go ahead and do this. But you don't know what you're getting yourself into. It would be premature to say, let's just go find it and build it and integrate it and go with it. Okay. I think you would be better served by making sure that you're prepared for this. So this is based on our experience doing this type of work, helping clients with these types of decisions. And so my first question is, are you prepared to spend more money? Because QuickBooks is historically, right, a small business solution. It is going to be the least expensive solution out there. If you start moving into something like Intuit Enterprise Suite, yes, that's going to be more expensive. If you're going to go to Desktop Enterprise or QBO Advanced, those are more expensive than maybe those lower tiers. Okay. But when you start going into the mid-market space, or you start growing out of the small business space, all of the solutions cost more money. Okay. So you need to be prepared to spend more money. I think number two, you need also to be prepared to hire experts or expand your team. If your staff is very familiar with QuickBooks and what it can do, but is not familiar with all the other functionality that you're hoping to get, you may need to hire an expert to help you with that. You may need to expand your team to be able to handle these new capabilities. And I would also say that you need to be prepared that this is going to take 3 to 6 months. Can it be done faster? Yes, of course. With enough money, you can get things done a lot faster. But I would say, generally speaking, you should plan on 3 to 6 months to evaluate, kick the tires, do the demos, get the quotes, do some test migrations, and then spend the next couple of months actually doing the migration. All in, it's probably 3 to 6 months. So if you're hoping to do it January 1st, you better be thinking about and starting that process in July. Otherwise, it's likely you won't get done in time if you're trying to do a January 1st cutover. Okay. Training everyone in the new system. this is probably one of the most underappreciated pieces of wisdom, is that you're migrating to a new system. Nobody's going to know how to use it. You're going to need to train your team on how to use that new system. Very, very important. Are you prepared to do that? Do you have time to train your new team? A lot of companies don't have time. So that's something you need to think about. I think the last thing that I want to bring up is be prepared to not be 100% sure that this is going to solve your problems. Okay. It's a very strange thing to say. I kind of acknowledge that as it comes out of my mouth. You want to be confident. You want to be 100% sure that you're moving to a solution that's going to be better and it's going to handle all your problems. My experience, however, has been that you're never going to be 100% sure until you're completely on that new system. You've gone through the migration, you've trained your team, you've got expert guidance, and you're fully using the system. Sometimes it might be a month or two after that you feel like you really, really have it all figured out. Okay. So don't be under the assumption that you're just going to have this 100% guaranteed clarity that this new solution is going to do everything you need. I personally have seen, and our solutions consultants have seen, when a company has oversold what their solution can do, and then you don't really see it working or not working until you've gone through all the entire process. So that's an uncomfortable place to be, but it's pretty typical. Okay. So let's now get into what are the actual options to consider. Okay. So, and also, by the way, let's assume for a second here that you're starting within the QuickBooks ecosystem. Okay. What would be the next thing to potentially consider out of the realistic options that you should be looking at? Well, first off, I would personally recommend looking at Intuit Enterprise Suite first if you're already on the QuickBooks ecosystem, because it's going to be an easier transition. It's going to be a faster transition. It's not as expensive as some of the other mid-market solutions out there. It's not going to require as much training or adaptation, and the data itself is going to migrate more smoothly, especially if you're already on the QuickBooks Online platform. That would be the first thing I would take a look at. Okay. Beyond that, it really does boil down to what are the features and functionality that you need? What are the capabilities that you need it to be? How adaptable, how customizable? What are you needed to do? Okay. Some of the more common ones that we hear and see and work with, we have partners that we work with, by the way, that are really experts in these other platforms. I consider us experts in QuickBooks and Intuit Enterprise Suite. We're not experts in NetSuite, but we know people. We're not experts in Sage, but we know people. So same thing with Microsoft Dynamics Business Central. Okay, so I would highly recommend, if you're outgrowing QuickBooks, after you look at IES, take a look at Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, NetSuite, Sage, Sage 50, 100, 300. There's several different versions of that. Acumatica is one that comes up. It's been around for a while as well. And then maybe on the fringe, I see and hear sometimes a little bit about Zoho, sometimes Epicor, sometimes SAP. But these are bigger platforms, bigger system, and oftentimes much, much more expensive than you may be currently using and working. But I'll give you the same answer I gave before. If you're not sure about these things, give us a call, let us know, and we can point you in the right direction. We can even point you out to a partner that might be able to help you with that migration if it's not a QuickBooks one that we do. Okay. Okay. I'm going to do, I do see some of the questions coming in. I'm going to get to those in just a moment. But let's do this talk about this last slide, which is an alternative. Okay. So we talked about QuickBooks plus third-party solutions. We talked about that as a hybrid solution to this challenge of outgrowing QuickBooks. What I would also consider, just in general, is using QuickBooks still for the core accounting and financial needs, but then offload everything else. One of the biggest challenges that we see as a business is people that need a CRM system, customer relationship management system, beyond what QuickBooks is capable of. So QuickBooks Plus Method, for example, is an incredibly awesome solution, very customizable, has a client portal. You can automate workflows. It's really, really great. Or you could do QuickBooks Plus Results. It does CRM, but it also does field service management, and it's also highly customizable, highly scalable. Highly recommend that. And then last but not least, QuickBooks Plus QuickBase. If you're looking for a completely from scratch customizable solution where literally no matter what you're trying to build, we can build it, but then integrate it back to QuickBooks, that's what QuickBase is. And that's something else that our company does. We build custom QuickBase solutions for pretty much anything a client needs so that you can keep using the very, very affordable QuickBooks accounting software. Okay, so I'm going to pull up this next poll and then I'm going to answer some questions while we're doing that. So let me pull up the polls and I am going to load the third poll here. So that should be on your screen right now. Which platforms have you used? Sage, 50, 100, 300, Sage, whatever, okay? Acumatica, Microsoft Dynamics Business Central, NetSuite, or maybe something else. Maybe there's some other solution that's not on that list that you have used. Just curious what your thoughts are on that. Again, while you're answering that poll, let me see if I can answer some of the questions that have come in while I've been talking. Okay. It says, I'm interested in migrating from Desktop Enterprise to QBO, but my staff and I are unsure how to transfer the data over. We also need help with QuickBooks Online training. Is that something that you can help with? Absolutely. Our company does that all day, every day. We can absolutely help you with that migration from desktop to online. I've actually got a few slides later on in the webinar that I'll point out. So let me talk a little bit more about that one in a moment. And then it says, next question was, what percentage of annual revenue should be spent on software or bookkeeping? Well, this is a hard one. This is a hard one to answer because it really does depend not just on your revenue, but like what are those things you need the software to do? Okay, so let me just try to explain what I mean by that. Okay, you could be a $50 million business and still using QuickBooks if it does what you need it to do. You could also be a $100,000 business making $100,000 in gross revenue every year, and QuickBooks may not be a good fit for you because you need it to do all these other things that are very highly unique and customizable. Okay, so it's not so much about the revenue, but I would say if you were looking at software plus maybe bookkeeping, I would say less than 1% of your annual revenue would be a good target for software plus some of the accounting. That may not include the payroll related to all that, but just in terms of software and maybe just the bookkeeping services that you may be using, that would be a pretty good range. Maybe so I'm going to say 1% or less than 1% of your annual revenue on software, okay, and accounting. All right, let me go ahead and end the poll, and I'm going to share the results with you. So the results are interesting. So most of you have used something else besides Sage, Acumatica, Microsoft Dynamics, and NetSuite, and that could be paper and pen. It could be Excel. Maybe it's Xero, for example. Xero is another solution that's out there for kind of like more on the lower side. And it looks like some of you have used NetSuite and Acumatica. Well, that's fantastic. Awesome. Cool. I'm going to stop sharing those. And I'm going to go on to the next part of the presentation. So we're actually on the last segment of the webinar, and that is so let's assume that you've decided, I need to move off of QuickBooks. I've outgrown QuickBooks. I know what I need to move to. The next question is, well, how do I get there? How do I migrate there? So this is where I'm going to touch a little bit more on the question that was asked behind the scenes. Okay. So first off, migrations are, from our experience, very painful. In a perfect world, you would click a button, the data would go from here to there, everything would be perfect, everything would match, no problems, everything's great. That is rarely, if ever, the case. When you're migrating from different systems, the data structure is the same, the features are different. The workflow that you might go through is different. There's so many reasons why these can be painful. It can feel like you're in a black hole because you're just like sucked into this vortex that you can never escape. Our job when we do migrations is to try to make it as painless as possible. Okay. So, but let's talk about that. First off, is it time to move? Okay. Has it gotten painful enough or costly enough for you to think that now's the time? Okay. If you're not quite there, if you're like, we can bear this, it's not horrible. Yes, we're not happy. Yes, this is not fun, but it's not painful enough to go spend, 5 times or 10 times or 20 times as much as we're spending on accounting now. Okay. Once the pain is big enough, you'll know it and you'll be looking for a solution. Secondly, is there a clear benefit or measurable improvement from going from where you are now to where you want to go? In other words, are you going to be faster in this new system? Will you stop? Will some of these workarounds that you're having to go through be solved? Will some of the inefficiencies lead to more profit for your company? Will moving to this other system allow you to scale bigger, faster? Those are some measurable improvements that you may be seeking. And so the question is, can you see that? Can you see the clear benefits to moving from this system to another system? Third, do you understand the hard costs as well as the other costs? So, when you're evaluating software, it's easy just to go to call up a vendor and say, here's what we need. How much is this going to cost? And get a quote. But if you're not thinking about how long it's going to take, how much training is going to be involved, how slow your team is going to be on the new system until they are up and running and experienced, those are costs. Those are absolutely costs. And if you haven't fully evaluated that, I think it's something you need to do. Okay. So definitely spend some time thinking about what are the costs beyond just how much the software is going to cost. Okay. A good rule of thumb, by the way, is no matter how much you are being told that this solution or this next thing will cost, I would probably estimate, and quite frankly, you've all experienced this too, maybe not in the QuickBooks migration space, but you've seen this. If you're going from something to something else and somebody is telling you how much it's going to cost, it's probably going to cost 2 or 3 times that amount. It's probably going to take 2 or 3 times longer than it's expected because, when you're going into this space that you don't have all the answers in, it takes time to figure that out. All right. And the last thing, is the new system more capable? Yes, it might be, but is it also more complicated to use? Well, the more customizable a software is, the harder it is typically to use because you have to figure out what's customizable, how to customize it, and then what to do with it once you've got it. So think about and make sure that you're considering the fact that, yes, this new system may be more capable, but is it also too complicated now? We have a lot of people that call us that have been on a solution like NetSuite, and they end up trying to move back to QuickBooks because NetSuite is very expensive. It's very, very big and robust and very complicated to use in many cases. And they're looking to move back to something less affordable, or less expensive, easier to use, more simple. Okay. So those are things that you need to be thinking about when you're migrating. Let's talk about some migration challenges. The good news is if you're moving from desktop QuickBooks to QuickBooks Online, as an example, or desktop enterprise to Intuit Enterprise Suite as an example, that migration can be easier. Okay. If your data it fits all the right criteria, you could literally click a button and move to QuickBooks Online and do a little bit of cleanup afterwards, but it's usually not that crazy. However, from our experience, moving even from QuickBooks Desktop to QuickBooks Online can be very painful. There's just a lot of things that can go wrong. It's one of the things that we are experts in, but even though we're experts at it, it's really, really hard to get everything working because they're completely different systems. The data is so different. And so it usually revolves a little around a lot of little cleanup and customization and tweaks that have to be made. Feature differences, data incompatibility is pretty normal, okay? And something else that we have found in, I would say about 8 to 9 out of 10 scenarios, taking your data or your history with you is typically not possible. Okay. Again, when all the boxes are checked and it's a perfect scenario, the data goes with it, the history goes with it, and everybody's happy. But if there's any sort of data incompatibility or corruption or the file's too big, you just can't take your data with you as much as you want. And so those are some things that we can talk about. Okay, so best practices, and then we're wrapping up our webinar today. First off, best practices to do a migration well. First off, prepare and involve your whole team, not just your accounting folks, not just your leadership team. Get your project managers on board. Get your salespeople on board. Yes, get your accounting people on board. Get your CPA on board. Make sure that your whole team is walking and talking through this. Do what are called mini test migrations. You're not going to be able to just migrate all of your data to this new system in one fell swoop, waiting until the very end. I recommend doing some test migrations, like, get a trial of the software, get a demo of the software, and play around with it a little bit to see if it can do some of the things that you need it to do. Number 3, avoid shiny objects. It is so easy. It is so tempting. You've made a decision. You're 2 months down the line. You're working towards this finish line. And then somebody says, oh, hey, have we ever heard, I just heard about this other solution. Has anybody talked about that? And now the team's like, no, but should we look at it? And now you've wasted 2 months of time and you're trying to switch gears it's just not good. Okay. Avoid shiny objects. Set aside time for training. Don't cut over until you're at least 90% ready. What does that mean? Don't cut over until you're at least 90% ready. My point here is this: you're never going to be 100% ready, but you want to make sure that you've got all your ducks in the row, at least 90%, before you then pull the plug or flip the switch and move over. You don't want to be halfway done and switch over, because then you're going to be in 2 different systems. It's going to be really, really hard on your team, and it just spells disaster for everybody. Okay, so be pretty close to finish before you think about actually cutting over. And then monitor for accuracy. Record the same transactions in the new system. Do they look and feel the same? Do you get the same impact on your profit and loss? Is your balance sheet right afterwards? All those types of things. And then here's the best wisdom I can possibly give you from experience is ask the question internally, who will be the most upset if this migration goes sideways? If they are not in the room, part of the conversation, part of the process, you're putting yourself at risk. Bring every stakeholder that needs to be in that process in the room, especially the one that will be the most upset. By the way, that's typically the owner. What are you guys doing? How come you guys didn't think about this? All those types of things. Make sure they're involved from the beginning on the calls with the vendors, with the software solutions consultants. Make sure that you've done all that. Okay. All right. I'm wrapping up here. We're almost out of time. Get expert guidance. I mentioned before that if you're moving into a new platform and if you haven't talked with an expert, do so, because they're going to save you some time. They're probably going to save you some money. We at VARC obviously know QuickBooks, but if it's something you're migrating to that is not one of our specialties, still call us, because we know somebody. We've been in this space for so long, and we have all the partner connections that you could possibly need, whether it's NetSuite, Microsoft Business Central, Sage. We have partners that we work with that can handle that are experts outside of the QuickBooks ecosystem that we are experts at. So I've been talking a lot. I do want to wrap up because we are at the end of the time there. So I'm going to wrap up with the last couple slides here. And then if I can, and I'll stick around afterwards, by the way, to answer any other questions that you might have. First off, if you are needing CPE credits, you can fill out an evaluation form, and that evaluation form is online. I'm going to put this in the chat panel for everybody. So if you see that on your screen in the chat panel, This is an evaluation form that we'd love for you to fill out. Give us some feedback on the webinar. And through that evaluation form, you can also request your CPE certificate for the 1 hour of credit. And if you don't get that link, or you log off here in a second and you didn't get the link, you can email us, call us, and we will give you that link. Okay. So first off, or sorry, when I say first off, last off, VARC Solutions, just real quick about us. We're based out of Friendswood, Texas, which is kind of South Houston. We've been doing this for 25 years. We've got a 17-person staff. We're QuickBooks, QuickBase experts. We do migrations, we do bookkeeping, we do cleanups, we do all that stuff. I've put the phone number and email address on the screen. So if you have questions that we didn't get to on the webinar, if you want to reach out to our team to kick the tires and ask questions on what might be a good solution for you, you can do that. You can call us at 281-412-6914, or you can email us at team@varcsolutions.com, and we'd be happy to help you. We do work with small, medium-sized companies, every industry you can imagine. We work with clients nationwide. Desktop QuickBooks, online QuickBooks, Intuit Enterprise Suite, we do it all. And then the last slide of my entire presentation is just a real quick screenshot of our solutions team. I'm here to help. Adam on our team is our solutions team leader. He is also one of our solutions consultants. We also have Emily Mendez, who is a solutions consultant, ready and able to answer your call. We also have Sharon White, who's our strategic partnership manager. If you're looking to partner with us, we would love to talk with you as well. And Sharon would be happy to have a conversation with you. And then just a little screenshot of our QuickBooks certified staff that specializes in, again, both desktop, online, and Intuit Enterprise Suite. I hope you got a lot out of this webinar. If you have questions we didn't answer, I will follow up afterwards. And again, I'm going to stop the recording, but I will stay around for a few more minutes to answer any other questions you might have.